Today, we'll talk about heart sounds. Before we talk about heart sounds, we need to consider the hemodynamic processes in a pump. Heart is a pump interposed inside a pipe. Any pump will take blood from the proximal part and deposit it into the distal part. For that, the chambers are sequentially contracting and the valves are oriented in such a way that when proximal chamber contracts, immediately in front will open, and the next chamber contracts, the proximal valves closes and the distal valves open. The reverse happens when the chambers relax. So the IVC and SVC gives the blood to a relaxed atria. At the time the AV valves are closed, atria I mean the right atria, left atrium simultaneously receives the blood from the lungs. AV valves are closed at that time. Then AV valves open into a relaxed state of ventricles, and at the end of the blood donation, both atrium contracts, empties the last drop of the blood into the corresponding ventricles, and then starts the systole of the ventricles. Systole of the ventricles leads to closure of the AV valves, pressure builds up a little, then opening of the VA, aortic and pulmonary valves open. So our concept of the chamber contractions, the electrical activity is generated from one side which passes through AV node, which creates the delay, so that the same impulse is utilized for the contraction of the atrium and ventricles at different timings. Atria get enough time for emptying the blood to the ventricles at the time of a relaxed ventricle, then only the ventricle is allowed to contract. The sequential things are happening. So we need to know about the inside chambers activity, how they are expressed out. So do we have any evidence of how the atria contracts? Actually, there is no audible sounds which you can say that atria are contracting. There is only indirect evidences which are reflected in the venous system. The pressure waves are reflected up where there is no valves, and you can see the pressure changes in the atria, which you are able to say and analyze the height of the waves and the different waves, ups and descents and all. When there is a pathological state, not in the normal state, you won't see the changes in the jugular. So the mirror of the RA is the jugulars. You don't have any method by which you can assess the LA contraction of the pressure. So you have some method to analyze the RA from the JVP. About the ventricular contraction, following the atrial contraction, that is the end of the reception of the blood, contracts and delivers the blood into the ventricles. You are getting the electrical impulse from the AV node a little later, delay, then electrical impulses stimulate the ventricles and ventricles start contracting. All of us learn the systole starts from the first sound and ends by the second sound. Diastole starts from the second sound, ends by the next first sound. That's what you learn. In fact, what is the reality? The electrical impulse, ventricles utilize, depolarize, and contraction starts. But contraction proceeds and the femoral pressure increases to that extent, then only the AV valves, mitral and tricuspid, starts closing and it gets shut, producing the first sound. So is this systole starting from the first sound as we believe? No. If it is first sound, the real contraction starts from somewhere here. Don't know, you are not in a position to get this picture, but this period of systole of the ventricles before the first sound. Just like that, it keeps on pumping. And when is the second sound actually? So is the systole lasting up to the second sound? No. When the ventricle empties totally into the atrium, the ventricle stops contracting and ventricle relaxes. When the ventricle relaxes, you won't know when the starting of the ventricle or the relaxation. The ventricle relaxes and the pressure goes down and down, down, a point at which the aortic and pulmonary vessel pressure is higher than the relaxed ventricle. Then what happens? The blood has got a tendency to come back to the semilunar valves. Then only the semilunar valve closes. So, when is the actual relaxation of ventricular diastole started? It's much earlier than the actual second sound. The relaxation. So, systole is starting from here to here, but we take it as from here to here. First sound to second sound. Systole is starting from here. Actual relaxation of the ventricle has started from here. So, we take it from the second sound to the next first sound. We need to know about the sequences of the systole and the timing of this one. And one more thing. What about the opening of the AV valves? Opening of the semilunar valves? Are you getting any sounds of the opening? You get the sounds of the closure of the mitral and the semilunar valves is marked as first sound and the second sound. What about the opening of the mitral, opening of the semilunar? You won't hear this thing. So when is this happening? When is the opening of the mitral valve happening? All of us know during the diastole. What happens after the second sound or closure of the semilunar valves? Ventricle keep on relaxing till a point comes when the ventricular pressure goes still down. It goes below the atrial pressure. At that point of time, mitral valve is in the closed position. Ventricle keep on relaxing, and at a particular point of time, atrial pressure is higher than the lowering ventricular pressure. Then only the AV valves, mitral and tricuspid, opens. This point is important. This is where is it? After the second sound, a little later. So here one more thing is I said it is the third heart sound happening here. So one more thing, mitral valve is opening. Opening sound is, sometimes the mitral valve is pathological, you can get the opening sound heard. So that is what is called mitral opening snap. So does that correspond to the third heart sound? No, it's a different thing. When the mitral valve opens, it produces with sound is opening snap. Immediately following that, the gush of blood goes and hits the myocardium. The diastolic period immediately following the opening snap is the third heart sound. Will you get this? So you won't get the sound of the AV valve opening. You won't get the sound of the gush of blood going and hitting the myocardium of the ventricles usually. But it can happen in some of the situations of just a normal situation, of athletic situation. Sometimes you may get a normally also third heart sound. But usually when will you get in a situation of myocardial pathology, or when the blood gushes, more volume of blood traverses from the atrium to the ventricle situation. So two situations you get the third heart sound pathologically. One is when the myocardium is damaged, when the blood, normal volume of blood, when the atria opens, goes and hit the myocardium, it produces an abnormal vibration. So you get in a myocardial dysfunction following, you heard of a right-sided S3 following left-sided S3. All these things in a myocardial damage situations due to multiple reasons. About the other situation where the myocardium is intact, but In a situation where there is more blood is coming and hitting the myocardium during the diastolic example, left to right shunt. This is more than 1.5 times of the blood is traversing, reaching the LA and it is opening. You get the third heart sound in a moderate VST shunt. When you get a third heart sound ventricle, the RA is large and more of blood in a case of ASD, that is released to the tricuspid valve to the right ventricle in a case of moderate ASD. So that indicates more blood is coming and hitting the normal myocardium. So these are the situations where you get. So just you got an idea about the timing of the heart sounds in relation with the normal physiological phenomena. Now we'll take one by one. 1, 2 and 3. I deliberately avoided the fourth heart sound because that's interesting, but it's a little more. All the things I am talking also is not at the UG level, little bit PG level. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. Fourth heart sound I deliberately avoid now in the present talk. So we'll talk about first, second and third heart sound. Okay, we'll talk about the first heart sound. So what are the mechanisms of the first heart sound? I told you it is a RA, it is a LA, this is a tricuspid valve, this is the mitral valve. Okay, this is the mitral valve. What situation you will get an abnormality of the first sound? The first sound integrity, it depends upon three things. It's contributed mainly by the mitral valve, a little lesser by the tricuspid valve. So you get a difference in the intensity mostly in the case of pathology to mitral valve because that is contributing mostly to the intensity part. So you need to assess the first sound first, followed by second sound, then third heart sound, then murmurs. That's the order. So about the first heart sound, so what all things? The intensity of the first heart sound is, and next less important is the split of the first heart sound. So intensity, what contribute to the intensity? Where will you get a disturbance in the intensity? The intensity is decided by one, the integrity of the valves, AV valves, integrity. If there is a problem with the AV valve pathology, it cannot close it. Just like any door which is damaged, the closure will not produce, it will not be appropriate, the sound will be less. The second thing is the myocardial force. When the myocardium pumping is less, you may get a intensity less. The third thing is very important, the position of the AV valve. If it is closing from the very wide open situation, coming and closing, imagine a door widely open and it is closing in a wind. It closes from such a distance, it is traversing and closing, you will get a loud sound. It's independent of the myocardial force. So it coming and closing from a wide position. So these are the three factors which can alter the intensity. So take one by one. What all situations are important in a mitral? I'll take it a mitral valve, tricuspid also. Tricuspid or mitral valve apparatus. What are the components of the apparatus? One is the ring. The second is the valve leaflet. And third part is very interesting. There are two papillae in a case of mitral and three on the right. And each papillae there are small projections. Around 6 small things are there. Then from there around 10 or so this strings goes out. So roughly around, you call it as caudate tendineae, around 120 numbers of caudate tendineae from 6 on this side, 6 on the other side, that will get intermingled actually and goes, interlace and goes, attaches the mitral valve ends, the tips. So it's not the one papillary muscle is getting to one. No, it is interlaced. There could be going from that side and this side, so that when you pull the strings, it closes. So that is the mitral valve apparatus, the annular ring, the valve as such, and the papillary muscles and the strings. Each of these things are important because the damage will lead to the loss of the integrity, and now we are talking about the intensity, but that is the basis of many of the situations where the valves are not closed properly, result in leak, results in maybe an abnormality in the opening also. Both ways the valves are important. So we need to know about the integrity of the mitral valve apparatus, and there can be a situation of heart sounds muffled due to abnormal pathology of any of these things leading to improper closure. So that's the reason why you get a muffling of the heart sound just because mitral regurgitation in a case of rheumatic heart disease. Second thing, of course, it's understandable when the contraction of the muscles are less. In the case of congestive failure or myocarditis, LV dysfunction, the ejection fraction is it's 20%. You heard about it. The heart contraction is so weak. So even after the systole, major share of your volume remains, and diastolic volume and systolic volume, there is not much of ejection fraction. Contribution out is less because the myocardium is weak. So there also you can get these days muffled heart sound. So that is happening in the case of congestive failure, happening in the case of myocarditis. So weak contraction. The third thing, the relative position of the mitral valve, wide open position. Where will you get it? What is the usual situation of the mitral valve in a case of normal? So we discussed about the opening of the AV valves during the, when is it? During the diastole of the ventricles. After the second sound, after the mitral valve opening, the mitral valve opens wide initially during the gush of the blood. And what will happen after this thing? There's not much of blood to traverse to the ventricles, to the AV valves. The AV valves will come very near after the atrial contraction. Last drop of blood is out into the ventricles. The mitral valves come to the mid position. During the ventricular systole, the execution of the valves is from the mid position to the closed position. So that is responsible for the normal intensity of the AV valve first sounds. If the stenosis is there, or it takes more time for the blood to traverse from the atrium to the ventricle, the blood will be flowing throughout the diastole, and it is kept open till the end of the diastole. There is no coming back to the mid position. So that's what is happening in an MS situation. The blood takes more time to come out into the left ventricle from the LA. So till the end of the diastole, mitral valves are kept very wide open. So it's crossing from the wide open position to the closed position. That's the reason why you get the first heart sound in a loud in a case of MS. So what is the reason for the commonest situation of loud first sound? It's not MS, it's tachycardia. When you run, when you are anxious, you can feel the thumping of the heart. Why it is? Because the heart sounds are loud. First sound is so loud. Why it is so? The diastole is so short. The heart is beating faster. You won't get more time for the diastole, for the wider position mitral valve to come back to the mid position. So it's each time it's closing from the wider position to the closed position. That's the reason why in an anxious state or tachycardia you'll get the loud sound. So that's about the intensity loud, intensity muffled in a case of first heart sound. What about the split? Split happens when the sounds occurs in two timings. That's so rare. If at all it happens, there can be a situation of left-sided bundle contracting first and the right-sided bundle, electrical activation of the right ventricle happens late. So most of the situations of this first heart sound split is usually due to electrical problems of the bundle branch block. Remote possibility of an outlet obstruction of this side or that side can delay the ejection timing of this side or that side. They are all rare possibilities, only clinically not much importance for the split analysis of the first heart. Now you come to the second heart sound. What are the components of the second heart sound? Second heart sound starts, it occurs, actual relaxation starts a little. Then there are two components, A2, P2. All of us know A2 occurs later than first and then P2. Why it's so? The main thing which decides the second heart sound again is the integrity of the seminal valves, aortic or pulmonary. Second thing is the pressure inside the system, aortic, the systemic or pulmonary system. The concerned system pressure high means the sound of hypertension, systemic produces loud second sound. Pulmonary hypertension produces loud pulmonary component of the second sound. So when you analyze what are the things to be looked for, can you hear both the components? If not, you wait in both inspiration and expiration and then analyze. If you can't hear both components, don't say I can't hear, it is single. No. Single cannot be committed by just momentarily. You auscultate, inspiration, expiration, then although you are not getting it, you expect the widest of the situation in inspired situation. So, analysis of the singleness, you can't say it is single by auscultating in the expiration. The very same way, you can't say the analyze about the split second sound without auscultating the expiration. So, that's very important. He says split second sound, is it split or not? The split naturally is there during the inspiration. You can't say it's a split fixed and all. So there you need to say whether the fixedness is persisting at the end of the expiration also. So auscultation of the second heart sound doesn't stop with the momentary auscultation. You should be auscultating at the beginning of expiration and inspiration also. Then only you comment about the timing part, not about the intensity. So about the intensity, where all you can get a muffling, where all you can get a louder intensity. Muffling, of course, it happens independent of the myocardial contraction. That's the important thing. You may get a myocardial dysfunction with a normal second sound. The intensity is decided by the pressure in the system. So intensity may be muffled when the pulmonary valve or aortic valve are damaged. So you get a intensity of the first, second heart sound due to aortic component low in a case of severe aortic stenosis, critical. Severe pulmonary stenosis, the pulmonary component of the second heart sound may not be heard. You get the second component of the aortic only. The valves are damaged. The other way, when the system pressure is so low, you may not get the intensity. Pulmonary stenosis, where the pressure goes down, the component may be low. So intensity, the classical situation where you are interested about the second sound intensity is not much on the aortic side, more on the pulmonary part. So you are bothered about the pressure in the pulmonary system. So when you analyze, you should have an idea about what is this intensity of the heart second sound in different ages. Then only you can say that it's loud. When you get a loud sound, you have to verify whether it is, the three mechanisms are there for getting a loud sound. It can be loud A2, it can be loud P2, it can be an A2 plus P2. Oh, there is one more thing. When the vessel is placed very near to the chest wall, you can get a loud single second sound which represents the particular vessel. So different mechanisms where you can get a louder second sound. So commonest, of course, is the pulmonary hypertension, pulmonary component. So we need to check the intensity of pulmonary component. If you feel it is pulmonary, you check the split. If the split is present, that means it's a moderate only. When it becomes severe, the pulmonary component closes earlier and earlier, it becomes very close to the A2. So all of us know A2 followed by P2. When the pulmonary pressure goes high, P2 comes closer and closer to the A2 and becomes single. And that too, when you take a deep inspiration, the splitting is not happening. That is the worst of the situation. The single loud second sound not getting split even during inspiration is the worst of the pulmonary hypertension. All of us know the other clinical signs of Graham-Shields murmur. All of us know the episodic right-left shunt which is happening and early cyanosis is happening if there is a communication. All of us know the RV dysfunction S3 and all in the context of a very severe pulmonary hypertension. And the other tests and all, oxygen saturation, respond to oxygen and inhalation and all are needed when you're thinking about the reversibility, surgical feasibility and all about the second heart. And these are all very, very relevant practical points when you need to decide about the surgical feasibility of this condition, congenital heart disease. About the other situation where you get a single sound, single normal intensity in a case of either pulmonary stenosis or aortic stenosis, you can get the sound of corresponding normal vessel. Third situation, single and loud. Other than the severe PH, you can get when the aorta is placed very in front. So, very common situation is the phallocetology. All of us know the phallocetology. The pulmonary valve is so stenosed and goes behind an aorta. Override comes to the front. It's very large. You can get a very loud. Second sound, it is actually not P2, it is A2. Sometimes the same thing can happen due to another congenital heart disease where you get a persistent truncus. So these are the situations where you get the second sound intensity. What about the split? So all of us are very much interested about the split. So how do you analyze the split? Split means A2 followed by P2. In a normal situation, it wider in inspiration, it narrows in expiration. So what are the situations where you get the split which are pathologically important? Classical situation of, and it can occur when there is a split wider occurs when A2 occurs early or P2 occurs late. So what are the situation when the P2 occurs late? When the RV takes more time for ejecting the blood out into the pulmonary system. A2 normal time, P2 occurs late. Examples are an ASD situation, TAPVC situation where the blood volume of the RV is more. TR situation, it will not happen because part of the blood goes back into the RA. So ASD, TAPVC situation, you get more of end-diastolic volume to be pumped through the pulmonary vessel. P2 becomes late. Another classical situation is when the RBBB, right ventricle contraction occurs a little later than the left ventricle. So these are the two situations where split is occurring due to a delayed closure of the P2. What are the situations where you can get an early closure of the A2? Early closure of the A2. A2 sometimes can occur due to, in a case of VSD situation, MR situation, all you can get sometimes. That's a rare entity. What about the outlet obstruction of the left side? It's the entirely opposite thing. A2 is getting prolonged. When an AS situation, outlet obstruction of the left side, sometimes there can be narrowing of the A2P2 and occasionally P2 occurs first and A2 occurs later. That can theoretically occur in a hypertension or a significant AS, reverse split. So, we consider different simple common situations of a pulmonary second heart sound intensity and the split. About the third heart sound, you already discussed about the timing of the third heart sound. Where will you get the third heart sound? That also we discussed. The commonest situations you need to look for the third heart sound is when you get a left to right shunt. In ASD, if it is large, moderate, you look for a third heart sound at the lower left channel border on the right ventricle. In a VSD and VDA, you look for the third heart sound to say that it is a moderate shunt at the apex to see how much of blood is traversing. You look for the third heart sound in case of LV dysfunction, myocarditis, cardiac failure, not due to the flow but due to myocardial damage. So we have covered heart sound 1, heart sound 2, heart sound 3. Heart sound 4, maybe it's a little postgraduate level, we'll talk about it later. Thank you.